Good morning. It's Saturday morning. We're on the back porch office today. Excuse me. Reading from Acts 2, verses 14 through 21, the first part of Peter's sermon in response to all these people that are outside listening. But Peter, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and give ear to my words. For these people are not drunk as you suppose, since it is only the third hour of the day. But this is what was uttered through the prophet Joel. And in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even on my male servants and female servants, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in the heavens above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the day of the Lord comes, the great and magnificent day. And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." Peter will go on to elaborate on that and talk more about what it means for to believe in Jesus. But for the moment, I want to look at something that Joel said, and that Peter quotes Joel. It's probably the only piece of Joel you've ever heard, but it's a good piece of prophecy. So, in 1980, I go to Princeton Seminary, and the first night before classes start, there's a banquet for the new students, and we go in the cafeteria, and there's a big banqueting tables are set up, and we have a speech, I guess you'd say, from Dr. McCord, James McCord, and he gets up and he reads this passage, and he looks around and he says, "Now, students," he had a very deep voice, but he says, "Look, this passage says men and women, young men and young women will prophesy. So I don't want to hear anything more about women not being qualified for ministry," which was kind of a big deal in the Presbyterian church in those days. If you came from the South, it was assumed that you were not going to ordain women, or not vote to ordain women. And this speech of Dr. McCord's basically settled the issue for me. I thought, well, he's right. There's no reason not to ordain a woman to office in the church or to ministry, in the minister of word and sacrament office. Now, I have known women pastors over the years who were fantastic. I've also known women pastors who were better suited to another career. I've known men who were better suited to another career, and men who were very, very good. So gender doesn't make a difference. It's whether you're talented or not, whether you have the gifts and the whatever it takes to continue. I was at a thing one time, and a woman was speaking, and she was doing just a fabulous job. And a woman who was in my congregation came up and said, "Oh my, doesn't that make you realize what we could have?" And so what I want to say is, if you if you have doubts about having a woman in your pulpit, don't. Just to make sure that the woman in your pulpit can really do it well. Now, I know there's this verse in Paul in 1 Corinthians where he says, "I don't let a woman teach, over men." That is very specific to 1 Corinthians, I think, and I don't think Paul meant it for the whole rest of history. I think he was addressing a particular problem that existed in Corinth at that time. There's also the notion in some churches that, well, Christ is incarnate as a human male, and so the priest serving the sacrament must also be male, which is a better argument than just some verse in Corinthians, except that we Protestants don't think of the sacrament and the person who serves it that way. And so, again, there's no reason why we can't accept and ordain women. Probably all of you agree with me, so there's no big deal here. But I just had to say those things because it's good for us to hear that and know that stuff. It's good for us to think about these things as we go along, and not just sort of Joel, and read over it. He says something important. Now he goes on to say a lot about, then this moon's going to turn to blood, by the way. It's apocalyptic detail that I think we can kind of read over that and say, okay, he's talking about terrible events at the end when the Lord, when God breaks into history and changes everything, and we'll have to just wait and see on that. So for today, embrace the fact that men and women are gifted in ministry and in the life of the church, and thank God for it.